Shabbat Shalom and Chodesh Tov. Thank you so much to Rav Claudia for giving me this opportunity to share a few words of Torah in memory of my beloved father, Dr. Jules Cohen, Yehuda ben Shmuel Vedora, Zichrono Livracha. I have a personal minhag of honoring my father's memory on this Shabbat, Parashat Shoftim, because this Shabbat, near his birthday, was his bar mitzvah portion. I didn't actually know that until the end of his life. His memory and speech were both a little shaky at that point. But one morning, about a year before he died, we were sitting together at my parents' kitchen table, and suddenly, from somewhere deep in the recesses of his memory, he started chanting to me a few verses, or a verse from the beginning of his Haftarah portion. Anochi, Anochi, O Menachemchem. I, the Lord, am your comforter. The opening verse of the Haftarah for Parashat Shoftim. It took my breath away at the time, both because I hadn't known that he was still carrying those words and that melody somewhere deep inside him, and also because the words themselves, words of comfort and nechama, so exquisitely captured who he was. My father, a cardiologist, spent his life comforting people. As a student of his said, his work was making the world safer for hearts. And for us too, for my brothers and me, just his presence made us feel protected, made us feel a little bit safer in the world. As I was reflecting on those words from the Haftarah that I will forever hear in his voice and through the prism of his life, I was thinking this week about how they connect to the Parsha itself, to Parashat Shoftim. The Parsha begins in a place of admonition and aspiration. Appoint for yourself judges and officers. You shall not judge unfairly. You shall show no partiality. You shall not take bribes. Justice, justice shall you pursue. And even, you shall not sacrifice an ox or a sheep that has any defect of a serious kind. The Torah here is calling us to the highest of standards, summoning us to be fair, to build a just society, to bring our perfect offerings. And then something interesting happens. In a sense, the rest of the Parsha is a sustained reflection on what to do when things go wrong, when we fall short of those standards, when we fail to meet those expectations, when we disappoint ourselves and each other and God. Ki yimatzeh, if there is found among you one who has transgressed the covenant. Ki yipaleh mimcha, if a case is too baffling for you to decide. Ki tavo el haaretz ve'amarta asima alai melech. If, after you have entered the land, you decide, I will set a king over me, as do all the nations about me. V'chi yeh ish soneh l're'ehu. If a person hates his fellow, if a person who is the enemy of another lies in wait for him and sets upon him and strikes him a fatal blow. Ki yimatzeh halal ba'adama. If in the land that the Lord your God is assigning you to possess, someone slain is found lying in the open. The entire Parsha is a reflection, legal, ethical, psychological, spiritual, on what to do if, what to do when we fail to fulfill the divine command, when we fail to live up to our highest aspirations, because we will, because we do. It seems so fitting that we read this Parsha just as we are entering into the month of Elul. The Hasidic master, the Sfat Emet, in one of his teachings on Parashat Shoftim, says this about the month of Elul. Certain times, we are told, are times of favor before God. These include the month of Elul, the time of the third Sabbath meal, and others. We are told this even though we know that time itself does not apply to God. The truth is that these are times of favor for humans, moments in which we are more able to draw near and attach ourselves to God with the inward desire of our hearts. God is filled with favor, but we must deserve to come close. From the book of Proverbs, Kamaim hapanim la panim, as the face in the water is to the face. As a person has compassion on himself, teaches the Sfat Emet, seeing that he contains a holy point of godliness, so too is great compassion aroused for him in heaven. Here in this week, as we begin the month of Elul, the process of reflection and repair, the process of tshuva, the process of preparation for tshuva, that brings us to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur a month from now, the Sfat Emet reminds us to begin that process in love. As our teacher, Art Green, writes, commenting on this teaching, it is only we who need those sacred times to inspire and refresh us, so that we will have mercy on ourselves and go drink of those ever-flowing waters. When we treat ourselves with compassion and forgiveness, those same forces will reveal themselves from beyond us as well. My father had very high standards for himself and others, as did my mother, but both of them understood deeply that the question is, what do we do when we disappoint ourselves and each other? How do we keep loving? How do we forgive? How do we begin again? I remember my father saying to me once that his best medical students were the ones who could deal with ambiguity, who paid attention to the patient, to the person in front of them, understanding that life never looks exactly like a page in a textbook. And the question is, what then? How do you understand the real situation in front of you? How do you care for the real person before you? How do you make the world safer for their tender heart? As we move into Elul this week, may we begin the process of reflection and repair in love, with compassion for ourselves and each other. And may we be met by the ever-flowing waters of compassion from beyond us as well. Shabbat Shalom and Chodesh Tov.